Okay, well, we'll stay there a second because I want to go to Cora Sherlock as well. Cora, good afternoon, or good evening to you. How are you? Sorry, I do forget what time of the day it is. Cora, I mean, you've heard Luke Silk there, and I'm sure you may be familiar with Luke and the group he represents in Galway. Have you got equal concerns about the legislation and the amendments to the legislation?
I think the real problem here, Niall, is that we're coming to a situation where the Minister is trying to insist on what he's going to bring in without essentially listening to anybody. My main concern in this whole situation is doctors, because we're in a situation now where we're 2 months away from what the Minister wants to do, which is to bring in legislation around about Christmas, around about the beginning of January. And at that stage, if we have doctors who have been trained in this country and have spent their lives training to save lives, and they are saying we are doctors who maybe campaigned for a no vote, voted for a no vote because they want to save babies' lives and women's lives, if they refuse to either carry out the abortion or refer on to someone who will carry out that abortion, at the moment, as the legislation stands, they will be going against the law in this country.
I think, Cora, they are going to allow conscientious objection. They just won't allow you not to refer.
But you see, that's not real conscientious objection, Niall. Conscientious objection should be what that actually says. It should allow doctors to say, I don't want to have any part to play in the abortion
But that would
procedure.
but would that not be difficult enough for a doctor as a human being? If a woman goes to him and arrives at his GP, clinic and whatever, and says, listen, I've thought about this long and hard, doctor, I'm pregnant, I don't want to continue with the pregnancy, for whatever reason, right? And the doctor turns around, he or she says, well, look, I don't get involved because I'm pro-choice, and I don't get involved. I'm not judging you, but surely he, as a human being, he would say, but look, I'm sure Dr. Murphy up the road, will kindly look after you, and that's all I have to say on the matter. I mean, how difficult would that be?
Yeah, I think the impression that you're painting there, with all due respect, is coming from mistakes that the Minister has made during this whole campaign, because he's suggested that doctors who disagree with abortion, who disagree with ending a baby's life at various stages in the womb, are the kind of people who will say, I have nothing else to offer to a woman who comes into them. And that's completely untrue, and it's unfair. And it's really a sign of the Minister only wanting to talk to the doctors that he knows will agree with him. He's prepared to listen to those doctors, but not to the doctors who say, look, I can offer something better to a woman than to say to her... But
is that condescending, Cora?
I don't think
you know what I mean? To a woman, I mean, as Frank said earlier on there, he trusts women to make decisions, right?
Well,
and if a woman has made a decision, I'm sure women just don't go on a whim half-heartedly wondering if they're going to have an abortion to a doctor.
Sure. But, Niall, I think it's very easy. With all due respect to Frank, this whole phrase of trust women always surprises me as a woman, because I think it's completely ignoring the very harsh grief and regret that many women feel after an abortion. Look at the women of the group Women Hurt, who were given so little hearing and certainly ignored by the Minister during the campaign. These are women who say that on the day their baby would have been born, they grieve the loss of their baby. These are women who had abortions and who have a real testimony to share with all of us, but they're not given the space. The other point I would make about the amendments generally is the fact that there are very, humane amendments that we should be talking about. Things like, as already been mentioned, the fact that a baby could be aborted because it's the, quote, wrong gender. That's something that's happening in the UK more and more.
It's technically illegal in the UK, but it still happens, mind you.
It still happps, certainly.
Yeah, but it won't be illegal here.
It won't be illegal here, and I don't see why.
But we were never given the impression it would be.
But the point is, why is the Minister saying we can't put in an amendment to that? Like, what is his problem with putting in that amendment?
Because he didn't offer that to the people. When we had a referendum, there was no suggestion at the time, up to 12 weeks, that wouldn't be non-permissible. The legislation that we were promised, or that the people were promised, the 67% who voted yes, was with no limitations.
But when we were voting in the referendum, we weren't even voting on this legislation. All we voted for was to remove the 8th Amendment. What the Minister told us was that there would be loads of time to talk about the legislation, and now we find, now that the referendum has taken place, that he's changed his tack in some way, and we're being told that we're not actually going to have the full discussion on these amendments that we need. Another amendment that we should be having is the amendment to talk about pain relief being given to babies at the later stage of abortion, where they can feel a pain of an abortion, which must
in your opinion, for the research you've done, Cora, When do you believe the fetus can feel pain?
Well, this is a discussion which is taking place all over the world, and there's loads of different studies about it. What concerns me is the fact that we're not having that discussion.
But when is that? Just for myself and the listeners, I've kind of tried to look it up. I've got numerous different opinions on it. When do you believe that the fetus can actually feel some pain?
I can't tell you when I believe. What I can tell you is that there are certain scientific studies throughout the world that will have differing viewpoints in terms of looking at when the nervous system of the baby has developed to a definite stage of allowing that baby to feel pain. What I would say is that when we're thinking about the fact that this is legislation with the sole purpose of ending the life of that baby, we should be erring on the side of caution, and we should be saying, let's put in an amendment there to say that if there's any possibility that the nervous system has developed and the baby might feel pain, let's give that baby an anaesthetic. This is after all, a procedure that's intended to end the life of the baby. That's what it says. What do
you say to people who say, yourself and Luke, who has been in the news a little bit as well, he's put out quite a lot of press releases as well, that Luke Silk and Cora Sherlock and other people like you who would be known to be pro-life or supporting certainly pro-life, are doing everything possibly in their tracks to make the legislation as difficult as possible. What do you say to those people?
What I say to those people is that, look, the referendum took place several months ago now. I know, I know I speak for Luke, for everybody who has been involved in that referendum and worked hard to secure a no vote and to save the lives of babies and the protection of women. We have accepted the results, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to try and put in amendments that we see to be humane, amendments that we can see from the experience of abortion throughout the world are necessary.
But Simon Harris and Leo Varadkar believe that some of these amendments that yourself and Luke and others like yourselves would be suggesting are making it more difficult for women to seek abortion, or would make it more difficult for a woman for that whole experience of going to the doctor and having a termination.
Well, all I can say to that is that I think Simon Harris is very blinkered when it comes to the issue of abortion. He wants to railroad through this legislation. He wants to make it impossible for doctors to say that they want to continue saving lives. I mean, there are going to be doctors, let's be honest now, there will be doctors in this country who will no longer be able to be doctors. Their livelihood is now at risk and will come to an end because they will not be able to continue. And I don't understand why we have a Minister for Health who is tasked with looking after the health system when we need GPs, that he's making it impossible for those GPs to continue. Why can we not have a situation where if we have decided in the country that abortion is something that's going to take place, doctors who don't want to have any part of it are allowed to do that.
Okay, sorry, Luke, just finally before I let you both go, I mean, you wanted the Journal, or a publication like the Journal, to do a fact check. What is the fact check you wanted done?
I want to fact check the statement that abortion would be legal under this legislation. If the legislation is not amended, this legislation would allow for abortion of perfect...
Literally up to the time the baby's born?
In the 9th month of pregnancy.
But from what you've seen from the legislation, Cora, would you go along with that as well? Does the definition and the wording of the legislation allow for that to happen?
I think it's conceivable. I mean, if you look at the legislation, Niall, the definition of a termination is a procedure intended to end the life of a baby. That's what we're talking about here. It's not health care. Everybody needs to be very, very clear about that.
But as I said to Luke at the start, I don't know whether you heard it, Cora, if a woman presents herself at 30 weeks to a doctor and says, it's an emergency, I have mental health issues, and I'm 30 weeks pregnant, I can't conceivably see two doctors agreeing to terminate the life of the child. Instead, they would, I'm assuming, induce labour, and the baby would be quite capable of being born.
Well, you see, I'd like to see where the duty of care to the baby is. We need to have a duty of care to that baby.
But can you conceivably see that happening? Could you actually see that happening?
Well, I'd like to see a discussion, and I'd see confirmation from the Minister, and I'd like to see him point out the part of the legislation where he can reassure this country that that will never happen. And if he can do that, then I'm happy. But I don't hear anything reassuring from this Minister for Health. All I hear from him is, I want to talk to the doctors who agree with me, and I want to ignore the doctors who disagree with me. That has been his modus operandi all the way along, and he has now achieved what he wanted, which was to win a referendum. But when he won the referendum, he assured us that there would be loads of time to talk about amendments, to talk about the legislation, and now we find we're on this fast track, Niall,
Do you believe voters were duped? Were they duped?
Were they duped? I think that there was an awful lot of information that wasn't put before them. I think that the Irish electorate are an intelligent electorate and that they should always be given all of the information, and I don't think that that was the case at all. I think that the constant...
Well, the only way that could have been ever done, Cora, is if we changed the Constitution rather than repealing it. So the only way we could have given them permanent information or information that couldn't be changed, because either way, you know as well as I do, you know, this legislation, they've said already in 5 years' time they're going to review it anyway. So, I mean, this could be changed from 12 weeks to 24 weeks in 5 years' time. It could be put to 16 weeks. It could be banned altogether, depending on the government that's in power at the time. So we change it any time.
Absolutely, and I mean, like I've already gone on the record to say that this debate will never end. I mean, TDs like Breed Smith are constantly saying it's over. It's never over. If you look around the world, the debate on abortion is constantly changing and moving back towards protection of mother and baby, because we are realising more and more that the baby is a baby in the womb who deserves the protection. But what I will say once again, the confusion that occurred at the time of the referendum came down to the fact that an abortion was never allowed to be called an abortion. It was described as health care. An abortion does not cure any illness. It heals nothing. All it does is end the life of a baby. And now we hear today that they won't even allow the word abortion to appear in the title of the bill or the act. I mean, what is that about? Call it what it is, ending the life of a baby.
Okay.
There are better ways to deal with unplanned pregnancies.